Hello, welcome back to Steins Gate 0. Something new happened. Now Kagari is holding Maho hostage. We were caught off guard, and before we could run, one of them grabbed Maho. And then there was no way for us to resist. They grabbed Daru and me, twisted our arms behind our backs, and slammed us to the ground. But it wasn't the group who attacked us in the building. They were all wearing full face masks, motorcycle jutes, and leather jackets. One of them, the girl holding down Maho, was clearly a woman. There was only one woman I knew who'd attack us while dressed like that. I was right. I knew that voice. I could tell even with her helmet hiding her face. She held Maho with her left arm and took out a military knife with her right. She put the knife up to Maho's throat. The horrible memories came flooding back to me. Whether it had happened in a different world line or not, the merciless voice that had taken Mayuri from me was right here. Oh. Yeah. And Moeka too. I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt and glared at the woman in motorcycle suit. I forced myself to speak, and the woman in the motorcycle suit took the knife away from Maho's neck. She handed her over to one of the other men. And then she took off her helmet. It can be Moeka or Kagari. We've seen both of them in the suits. Moeka Kiryu, so it was you after all. Her eyes were completely devoid of emotion. Just like they were on August 13th. I was forced off the ground by one of the others. But my arm was still twisted upwards. I tried as hard as I could not to scream from the pain. Moeka slightly nodded to the other men. The hand that was holding me drew back. I could finally move again. Well, now he has to deal with this again. Daru was released too, and he stood up mumbling something, but Maho was still in their hands. Daru was about to take off his backpack. Maho looked like a small child on the verge of tears. Still glaring at Moeka, I took the laptop and hard drive out of the backpack. She didn't respond. Fine, then. I'd have to bluff. I put the two items back in the backpack and handed it over to her. It was all I could do to keep my voice from quaking. And do you have to attack Okabe's friends again, Moeka? Of course, I had no clue what the password was. If they found that out, we were doomed. Daru was giving me a questioning glance. I ignored it. Keep your mouth shut, Daru. Alright, she fell for it. That meant. No, it's not good enough. This woman. I could feel cold sweat on my back. I'd never been involved in a life or death deal before, and I had no idea what to do next.
他の二人はここへ置いていってもいい。
待て。だったら俺が行く。それでいいだろう。
あなたのことは上から何も聞かされていない。パスワードを知っているかどうかもわからない。
She saw right through me. Moeka put the knife back to Maho's neck.
明日至る。早く来て。
そういうセリフはもっとエロいシチュの時にお願いしたいわけだが。
Daru was joking, but his whole body was shaking. What do I do? They were going to kill Daru. I thought as fast and as hard as I could, but nothing came to me. In this world line, Daru was going to live until 2036 and complete the time machine. That much was clear from Suzuha's testimony. If the world lines were going to converge, even if Moeka took Daru here, he wouldn't be killed, right? No, but that didn't mean I could leave him here. One of the men with Moeka was looking at his watch. She noticed it too. They might have felt they were taking too much time with the kidnapping done in broad daylight. I hoped that somebody might wander by, but there was no counting on that stroke of luck. I needed to solve this myself instead of relying on others.
誰か殺してみせればいい?
I felt a cold knife pressed hard against my carotid artery. Daru and Maho were screaming, but suddenly it all seemed unreal, like it was taking place in a distant world. They say that's what happens whenever someone is confronted with their own death, and it was happening to me now. I can't die either way, right? I tried asking myself that. I tried asking Suzuha, even though she wasn't here. I tried asking the world. Of course, nobody answered. The fact that I might not die didn't mean I could do something stupid here. A normal college kid like me would be too scared to move once they had a knife to their neck. I'd seen people die many times, and I'd almost been killed, but I never did get used to it. Thoughts of Kiryu's blood came back into my mind, and I almost suffered a flashback. My body shook, and it was all I could do to keep from collapsing to the ground. Was there nothing else I could do? Just when I was about to give up, a black van pulled up and braked hard at one end of the alley, blocking us in. The sliding door opened, and out poured men carrying assault rifles. Oh, this looks familiar. They were all wearing gray military uniforms and face masks. Their eyes were the eyes of trained soldiers. From their huge frames and the color of their skin, it was clear that they weren't Japanese. They have suits now. How do you know that? I immediately realized that this was all real. It wasn't cosplay or anything like that. Those guns were real, and a battle was about to begin. My experience with the August 13th attack and the war zone I had lived in until only a few days ago came back to me. It didn't matter who was friend or foe. Moeka moved the instant I spoke. She saw the attackers and jumped into the shadow of a nearby building. The other rounders spread out too. They let go of Maho, who was standing up, confused, in the middle of the alley. The man who was holding me was the only one who reacted a bit too slowly. There was a sharp noise, and a bullet went through the helmet of the rounder who was holding a knife to my throat. As he went down, I went down with him, and I hit the ground hard. The impact made me let go of Daru's backpack. One of the other rounders grabbed it off the ground and ran in the opposite direction of the van. A man got out of the van, evidently the commander, and barked orders in what sounded like Russian. One of the soldiers turned their gun on the fleeing rounder. Her body flew up off the ground as both she and the backpack were torn open. The contents of the backpack fell to the ground, scattering across the asphalt. The laptop and hard drive were hit with more gunfire than possibly could have been necessary. Kiryu's laptop and hard disk returned to unrecognizable scrap in just a few seconds. I crawled beyond a light pool without even bothering to look. It really all happened in an instant. I looked around and the Russian soldiers were running toward us. Moeka and her rounders had vanished at some point, leaving only the two bodies. The soldiers silently recovered the remains of the laptop and hard disk, picked up the bodies of the two rounders, and got right back in their van. They didn't even pause to look at us. They were only a couple of minutes between the time when they arrived and when they left. All that were left were little fragments lying on the ground. The blood from two bodies. Maho, who was lying on the ground and shaking. Itaru, who was standing in shock behind one of the buildings. And me lying on the ground. My heart had been pounding the whole time. I only felt the pain in my neck after it was all over. Evidently, the knife had cut me a little when I'd fallen. A while later, we finally heard the sirens of a police car. And it was only then I remembered that I was in Akihabara, Japan. The Third World War may have started long ago, and we just didn't know it. I realized that in the face of a war between nations, we truly were powerless. Akihabara was in an uproar. There were lots of helicopters in the sky that probably belonged to the media. We escaped to the lab, making sure that no one was following us. Ooh, it hadn't been that long since we were attacked at the hotel. If the cops found us at the scene of another crime like that, they'd be suspicious for sure. So we ran before the police arrived. Suzuha wasn't at the lab. Maybe she sensed what was going on outside and went to check on the time machine. We held our breath and waited. It felt like if we let anyone know we were here, more scary people would burst down the door and charge in.
橋田さん、ここタオルって置いてある？
洗面所にある。
Maho nodded and brought a new towel from the washroom. She handed it to me.
岡部さん、首血が出てる。これで押さえて。
ああ、ありがとう。
My neck was wet with blood. Fortunately, it wasn't a deep wound, so it wasn't long before it stopped. After handing me the towel, Maho sat down right on the floor and didn't move. I knew how she felt, especially since this was the second time she'd been attacked. And this time, people had died right in front of her.
大丈夫か、比叡城さん。
She nodded hesitantly, but her face was deathly pale, and I realized that she'd been clutching her left hand into a fist this whole time, and there was blood coming out of it.
怪我したのか、見せて。
Evidently, she hadn't noticed she'd been hurt. She was looking at her left hand, confused.
あら、
どうした？
指開かない。変ね。
Maho had been holding some small fragment in her left hand. Her hand had frozen around it and wouldn't move. Soon it started to shake. I grabbed her hand and forced open her fingers one by one. Whatever it was, she'd been clutching it so tightly that she'd cut off the blood flow to her fingers. They were very cold. When I finally forced her hand open, the thing she was holding fell to the floor. What was it? I picked it up. Oh, okay. It was a red piece of magnesium alloy. It was a piece of Kiryu's laptop. She must have grabbed it off the ground when she was running away. If she held something so sharp tightly for so long, of course she was going to bleed. I returned it to Maho without a word. She took the broken fragment and cradled it in her hands and stared at it with an empty expression. Suddenly, a single line of tears dripped down her cheek. Oh, don't cry. After that, it didn't stop. She continued to sob.
ごめんね。守ってあげられなくて。ごめんね。
It was as if that tiny fragment was Kiryu's herself. She held it to her chest and
比叡
kept
城さん、
crying.
きっとクリスは安心したと思う。君が無事でよかったって。だから君が謝ることなんてない。謝らなくてもいいんだ。
She didn't respond. Instead, a phone started to vibrate.
私、
Maho took out her cell phone and looked at the message she received.
レスキネン教授からだわ。
どうした？
荒らされたって。オフィスとあとホテルの部屋、教授と私のひどいことになってるって。
そうか。
Don't know. Whether it was the Rounders, the Russians, or whoever had first surrounded the cosplay shop, they must have been after Kiryu's laptop and hard
あの
drive.
PC バックアップは存在しないんだよな。それならこれでよかったんだ。クリスの残したものが何十億もの人を殺す道具として使われることはなくなったんだから。
In the end, I got what I wanted. The data was destroyed before anyone got their hands on it. There was so little left that I was sure there would be no way to restore it.
つうかさ、ロシアはなんであの PC を壊しちゃったんだろう。手に入れようとしてたんじゃなかったん？
今のところタイムマシン開発競争じゃロシアがリードしてるんだ。ロシアからすればノート PC を手に入れられればそれでよし。だが他の連中に奪われるぐらいなら壊してしまった方がマシって考えてたんじゃないか。
They probably wanted to avoid a protracted gunfight with the Rounders in broad daylight in Japan. The cold way they made their decisions made me shiver. They really were professional soldiers. An amateur couldn't do that.
で、これからどうする？
できればここにはいたくない。
Russia might not know about this place, but Moeka might. If the Rounders were on the move, then Tenoji downstairs might be involved too.
日が暮れたら移動しよう。
It would have been great if Suzuha had come back, but I couldn't get in touch with her. Maho was sinking into a warm bathtub. She could finally feel blood flowing through her body again. The heat melted the tension away from her muscles. Her injured hand hurt a little, but it wasn't unbearable. She felt like she'd come back to life. Once the sun had set, Maho and Itaru had gone to Ferris, the cat-eared maid at Queen Anne's Squared, for help. Ferris's home was at the top of the high-rise condo building on prime Akihabara real estate. From a security perspective, it was superior to the future gadget lab in every way imaginable. Ferris welcomed the two of them, offering them food and a place to sleep. And now she'd even offered them a bath. Maho was a little worried about Itaru Shida. He'd insisted on staying to wait for his younger sister Suzuha, and remained alone at the future gadget lab. More than an hour had passed since then. Had Itaru heard anything? And even if they'd moved, that didn't mean this place was safe. The group from this afternoon could attack at any time. She couldn't help but feel nervous, and that made her feel terrified and vulnerable as she sat naked in the bath. She got out of the bathtub and hurried to the changing room to wipe herself down. She tried to put on the change of underwear Ferris had given her. And it's not looking good. And her hands started to shake. Then her knees buckled and she fell to the ground.
極度の緊張とそこからの急激な緩和で一時的にひどい筋弛緩が起こってる。
She tried to stay calm by analyzing herself, but that didn't mean she could do anything but lie down.
これはまずいわ。
Alarm bells were going off in her head. She'd just about given up, knowing that it would pass with time, when Ferris popped her head in. Ferris screamed and started to panic when she saw Mao naked and lying on the floor.
いや、別に大丈夫だから。
Mao's voice was so weak that Ferris didn't even hear her.
とにかくベッドに連れてかなくちゃ。
Ferris tried to pick up the naked Maho and then slipped and dropped her. Maho hit the back of her head on the floor. She saw little stars dancing across her field of vision. Sprawling naked on the floor, face up, Maho tried to force herself to stand, but her arms were too weak.
聞いて、これはすぐに治るから。
But Ferris wasn't listening. For some reason, she decided to reach around Maho from behind and try to drag her up. And then Rintaro must have heard Ferris' scream because he ran in.
どうしたんだ、フェイリス。あ、
Girl, are you okay? She wanted to scream, but all that came out was a tiny whimper.
本当に悪かった。この通りだ。
And Taro lowered his head deeply towards Maho as she lay on the bed.
謝らなくてもいいわ。さっきのはあくまでも事故なんだから。
But she still couldn't bear to look him in the face. Just remembering the despair and embarrassment she felt when he saw her nude body made her want to bury her head in the pillow and flutter her legs back and forth. To make matters worse, she still hadn't been able to stand up after all that, and Rintaro had been forced to carry her to the bed. She'd never been touched by a boy before, and so it was only today that she realized how rugged male arms were. Being carried was extremely uncomfortable, to the point where she'd squirmed around and almost slipped out of his arms. So she had no choice but to curl herself into a ball and let Rintaro do whatever he wanted with her, which made her feel really strange. And now she couldn't even bear to look at his face. Ferris was sitting next to Rintaro, feet under her knees, with her shoulders slumped.
いいのよ。むしろ驚かせてしまってごめんなさい。
体は平気なのか。病院に行かなくても。
強い緊張が続いていたから、その反動が来ただけ。もう少し休めば回復すると思う。心配かけてしまったわね。みっともないわ。
みっともないもんか。今日みたいなことに巻き込まれれば誰だって怖い。具合だって悪くもなる。
あなたでも怖い？
ああ。
そう。
今夜はもう休むといいにゃ。事件のこととかこれからどうするかとか難しい話は元気になってから考えるといいにゃ。
そうね。ええ、そうするわ。ありがとう。
Maho closed her eyes. The lights went out and Rintaro and Ferris left the room. She lay on the bed and tried not to think about anything. She could hear the pounding of her heart. It would get louder and then softer. The rhythm was very strange. And she could hear a kind of static noise mixed in with her heartbeat, like a broken TV. Was it exhaustion-induced tinnitus? Whatever it was, once she noticed it, she couldn't sleep.
そういえば、岡部さんが精神安定剤を服用しているって言ってたわね。
She wasn't supposed to do this, but if she looked at their ingredients, she could tell what medications had what effect. Should she take a look and have him lend her some? If that wasn't possible, she could at least get some over-the-counter antihistamines and to use as a sleep aid. She turned over.
大声を出さないで。言うことを聞いて。さもないと
Histamine.
命はない。
I've heard this. Suddenly, she heard a voice break through the unpleasant noise. She gulped and leapt out of bed. Terror-stricken, Maho tried to crawl to the door, but her legs wouldn't move like she wanted to. She couldn't stand up. The voice in her ears followed her wherever she went. It was like a wild animal toying with its prey. All of the hairs in her body were standing up on end. Her jaw was chattering so hard she bit her tongue. She desperately crawled across the carpet and towards the door.
一人殺してみせればいい。やめて。やだ。
Come on, Moeka. Stop this. She woke up to find herself being violently shaken by the shoulders. She looked around the room, panting. She was in bed with Rintaro, and Rintaro was looking down at her. Yep. Her whole body was sweaty, and she felt sick. There was a burning sensation deep in her stomach.
どうした？
誰かがここに。
Itaru looked around. Ferris came a moment later, as well as the older man who was her butler, but they were simply standing at the entrance of the room, concerned.
きっと悪い夢を見たんだ。
The antique clock on the shelf said that at some point it had gotten past 1 o'clock a.m. She must have slept for hours without realizing it.
そうね、夢だったみたい。
She took a painful breath and wiped the sweat off her forehead without realizing that she sounded just like a little child. She sent Ferris and the butler back to their rooms. Rintaro brought her a towel from the washroom.
ひどい汗だ。拭いた方がいい。
She did as he said and wiped the beads of sweat off her face, chest, and limbs. As she was deciding whether or not to wipe the inside of her pajamas, Rintaro took the hint and turned around.
俺も自分の部屋に戻るから、何かあったらいつでも声をかけてくれ。
橋田さんは？
あ、さっき連絡が来たよ。鈴葉とも合流したって。
そう。
それじゃあ。
Rintaro was about to leave her bedside, but Maho, and she couldn't believe she was doing this, reached out and grabbed the hem of his shirt without thinking.
お願い、少しだけでいいからここにいて。
ひやちょさん。
一人にしないで。
Maho was surprised by the words she was saying, but the thought of spending this terrible night all by herself was too much for her. Rintaro must have understood how she felt because he nodded without smiling.
わかった。眠るまで一緒にいるよ。
ありがとう。わがまま言ってごめんなさい。
He just wants to be around someone.
いいんだ。どうせ俺もなかなか寝つけなかったし、後ろ向いてるから汗だけはちゃんと拭くといい。
Protect her, Kagari. While Rintaro stared back at the door, she took off her pajamas and wiped off the thick layer of sweat that covered her whole body. She tried to put her pajamas on again, but they were too drenched for her to want to wear them. She had no choice but to dive back under the covers in nothing but her underwear and bring the comforter way above her chest.
もういいわ。
Amidst the dim glow of the midnight light, Rintaro brought a chair to the side of the bed and sat down.
ここで見張ってるから何も怖がらなくていい。これなら安心だろ。不安か？
大丈夫。
Ma's face felt hot from some feeling that she didn't understand. She sank deeper under the blanket and turned away from Rintaro. She softly closed her eyes. She could feel his presence behind her. The two of them stopped talking, and the only noise was the distant sounds of night coming from beyond the curtain. How long did they spend like that? Just as she was about to fall into a light sleep, she heard a soft voice in her ears.
ひやじょうさん。まだ起きてるか？
ええ。
She felt herself waking up again. She opened her eyes and turned back toward Rintaro, only to see him staring toward the window. It was as if he was trying to see some sight that lay beyond it. His profile was so handsome. For some reason, that was the thought that came to her.
どうかしたの？
Rintaro seemed unwilling to talk, so Maho decided to speak first. He swallowed loudly.
本当はずっと言おうと思ってたけど勇気がなかった。すまない。
何のこと？
俺は一つだけ君に 重大なことを隠している。
Maho leaned forward, not caring that he might see her chest.
さっき話したよな。別の世界線のことや、そこで出会ったクリスのこと、タイムマシンやタイムリープのこと、
ええ。
クリスとその父親のことも。
ええ。
あの時本当はもう一つ言わなきゃいけないことがあったんだ。でもどうしても言い出せなかった。
His head was slumping forward in the chair. Maho waited silently for his next words. Despite the late hours, she heard a helicopter in the distance. For some reason, it sounded really loud. She hadn't seen the news, but it was possible that the media was still talking about the gun battle that had taken place this afternoon.
これは君にだけは絶対に話すべきことだったのに。
That was so scary. When he finally spoke, his expression was unlike any look she'd ever seen on his face before. I'm happy they're okay. It was pain, sad, and suffering, like someone at the bottom of a deep, dark place. And yet there was something in his eyes that hinted at incredible self-hatred and rage.
岡部さん。
Suddenly, her chest felt like it was about to burst from pain. She didn't know where the pain was coming from, but she wanted Itaru to stop looking like that.
あの日ラジカンでクリスを。
His hands were forming some kind of shape, like he was holding an invisible knife.
クリスを殺したのは。
もういいわ。
She screamed, unable to take it anymore. She rolled out of bed, forgetting how she was dressed, and covered Itaru's hands with her own.
いいの、もういい。それ以上言わなくていいから。私はあなたを信じているわ。だから話さなくていい。いつかその時が来たら嫌でも聞かせてもらうことになると思う。でもそれは今じゃない。その時が来るまでは口をつぐんでおきなさい。
She strengthened her grip and forced him to let go of the invisible knife. Itaru nodded without saying another word. They simply stared at each other for a while. Maho couldn't look away from his gaze. It was as if he was clinging to something or wandering in search of salvation. She sneezed.
風邪ひくぞ。
And it was only then that she realized that she was holding Itaru's hands while wearing next to nothing. Itaru looked a little embarrassed.
ごめんなさい。
She quickly jumped back in the blankets. She curled up into a ball and tore at her hair, screaming inside her mind. She let a boy see her naked not once, but twice.
私今度こそもう寝るわ。
邪魔して悪かった。
邪魔だなんて思ってないわよ。でもさっきの話はこの場限りにしていい？
あ、
いい？
あ、ありがとうヒヤジョーさん。
お礼なんて言われる筋合いはないわ。それじゃあおやすみなさい。
おやすみ。
The room got quiet again. The adrenaline rush kept Maho weak. After a while, she heard snorts coming from Itaru's direction. Eventually, he'd fallen asleep. He must have been tired. He went through the same attack that Maho had. Of course he was. His breathing wasn't peaceful at all. It was pained. He may have been in the grip of some terrible nightmare. Maho hesitated several times, but finally she turned over and stretched out her hand from the blankets. She softly touched the backside of his hand. She felt its warmth on her fingertips.
クリスはあなたのことをなんて呼んでいたのかしら。岡部さん、それとも凛太郎だったのかな。
She didn't know, but it didn't matter.
しっかりしなさい。岡部凛太郎、この私が好きになった人はそんなに弱い男だったわけ。
She tried to think about how Kurisu would say those words, and eventually Rentaro's breathing started to become more peaceful. Relieved, she let go, and then she changed her mind and grabbed the hem of his shirt again. She felt embarrassed as if she was a little kid, but at the same time she felt like now she might not have any more nightmares. That night, for the first time in a very long while, she dreamed of a smiling Kurisu. Well, they're okay, great. Oh, and I stayed at Paris' house for several days after that. Now that Kurisu's computer was destroyed, the odds that anyone would come after us had gone way down, but there is still a chance. Just to be extra careful, I stayed away from the lab.
Maho, Rintaro.
Dr. Luskin looked a little thinner since the last time I'd seen him.
教授、よかった、無事で。
魔法も大変だったね。
Dr. Luskin held Maho tightly in his huge arms. The difference in size between them was so great that Maho looked like some kind of stuffed animal.
教授、きつい。きついです。
Dr. Luskin and Maho were leaving the country in the afternoon on a weekday, so I was the only one who could see them off. Since I'd been with Maho the whole time, instead of only seeing them off, I'd actually just brought her there. Maho, after all, was the kind of person who was incapable of getting to an airport on her own. I was amazed she'd survived this long, given her lack of basic skills. We'd held Maho's goodbye party last night at Ferris's house. Ferris was there, and so were Mayuri and Itaru, and the others from the Christmas party. All were sad to see her go.
Rintaro, Maho と一緒にいてくれてありがとう。本当に世話になったね。
いえ。
それで、うちの研究室にはいつ頃来られるのかな？
He wasn't kidding about that, huh?
勉強して少しでも早く行けるように頑張ります。その時は俺から連絡しても。
もちろん、いつでも待っているからね。
He smiled as he took my hand and shook it. I was really glad to hear it. After meeting Amadeus, my desire to go to Victor Contra had only increased.
岡部さん、お礼を言わせて。いろいろとありがとう。あなたがいなかったら、私は今頃命はなかったかもしれないわ。
大げさだな。
いいえ、本心よ。本当に感謝している。私もあなたのことを待っているから。頑張って。
あ、君も研究を頑張ってくれ。
それでレンタロー、事前に連絡しておいた通り、アメデウスのアクセス権は今日ここで解除させてもらうことになるんだ。いいね。
はい。
Evidently, they couldn't leave me with access to Amadeus after they left the country. I was only supposed to test her during their stay here anyway.
クリスに最後に挨拶するかい？
そうですね。あ、じゃあ一言だけいいですか？
もちろん。
Aww. I tapped the icon for Amadeus.
何？私にもお別れの挨拶してくれるの
Kiryu was expressionless for some reason.
まあな。必要なかったか？
私なんかよりも先に真帆先輩には挨拶したんでしょうね。ちゃんとしたわよ。
Maho interjected before I could speak.
それならいいけど。
Kiryu was inside my screen. Was it a good thing that I had spoken to her like this? Or a bad thing? In the end, I knew I needed to forget about Kiryu Makise, but I couldn't. I couldn't escape from this curse.
アクセス権がなくなったな。も 会えなくなるな。
まあ私の話し相手になってくれたことには多少は感謝してる。レスキネン教授の研究室に来る可能性はあるんでしょ。一応再会する時まであんたのことは覚えておいてあげる。
ツンデレだな。
ツンデレ？何それ、知らない言葉を使わないで。
顔が赤いぞ。
この子照れてるわね。
クリスはシャイだね。
教授まで。
元気でというのはちょっと違うな。君は別に病気にはならないわけだし、あまりヒアジョーさんのことをからかうなよ。
はいはい、言われなくても分かってるわよ。
それならいいんだ。
あんたがいつかそんな風に寂しそうに笑うんじゃなくて、心の底から笑える日が来るといいわね。
I guess even an AI could see right through me. Kurosumaki Seguroi was one heck of a woman.
それじゃ。
あ、
Kurisu disappeared from my screen. I turned to Dr. Leskinen and nodded, deleting the Amadeus icon from my screen.
アクセス権の解除は後でこちらで手続きしておくよ。テスターとして協力してくれてありがとう。貴重なデータが取れた。
こちらこそありがとうございました。
I bowed deeply to both Maho and Dr. Leskinen. As I watched their plane take off into the distance, I noticed that it felt like there was a hole in my heart. I clutched my phone tightly. Its connection to Amadeus was gone. Yeah. Ooh, okay.
かがりちゃん、今日から私とあなたは正式な親子になるのよ。
Oh. This was when Kagari was 6. She'd been living in a facility for war orphans and getting treatment at a dedicated clinic next door. It was a completely different place than the normal hospitals, which were overflowing with casualties from the war. It was an idyllic garden shut off from the despair of the outside world so that children could live in peace. That was where she'd met her mom. Mom, Mayuri Sina, was a Class 2 caregiver at the facility who was always very nice to her.
本当？ママがかがりの本当のママになるの？ええ、そうよ。やった！
It was impossible to express with words how happy Kagari had felt. Being Mom's real daughter meant that Kagari had become her real name. Kagari became Kagari Shina.
ほら、くっつかないの。かがりちゃんは甘えん坊さんね。じゃあ、ここから出られるんだよね。ママと一緒に暮らせるんだよね。ごめんね。かがりちゃんにはもう少し治療が必要みたいなの。
そういうことなんだ。
あ、先生。
Kagari didn't know the doctor's name, but he was a nice old man who was always kind to her.
あと半年もすれば終わるからね。それまで我慢するんだよ。
半年もですか？この前のお話ではあと2週間ぐらいで大丈夫だと。
それは身体的な傷の話なんだ。東京大空襲で子供が受けた心的外傷後ストレスは大人の比ではないからね。それに昨日の診断で分かったことなんだが、かがりちゃんはまだ怖い夢を見るらしい。
そうなの？かがりちゃん。そんなことないもん。もう怖い夢なんて見ないよ。楽しい夢ばっかりだよ。楽しい楽しい。
かがりちゃん、嘘は良くないよ。それでは治療はもっと長引いてしまう。夜中に怖い夢にうなされて起きることが未だによくあるのだと昨日話してくれたよね。
まあ、そうなの。
この子の脳内に空爆の記憶が恐怖として残っている証拠だろうね。きちんと治療しておかなければ後で取り返しがつかなくなる。
そうですね。
というわけで治療を続けてもよろしいかね、お母さん。
はい、かがりちゃん。 頑張って悪い病気をやっつけようね。
Oh. Mom rubbed her head. Kagari felt so at peace that she could cry.
いい子だ。
じゃあまた後でね。
Cute little Kagari.
ママ
Oh. Mom took her hand away, and instead the doctor took Kagari's hand. She was taken to the usual room. There was a white reclining chair, and next to it, some kind of mechanical system connected to a headset.
聞こえるいつもの声。
君はママを守るんだ。この世界を守るんだ。そのために君は生まれてきた。
She's hearing voices. She couldn't remember when she started hearing the voice. But by the time she was 6, whenever she was worried, uncertain, or in trouble, she could hear it. It was always kind and strong, and it always cheered her up. In Kagari's childish mind, she started to think it might be the voice of God. Since only she could hear it, everyone else said it was just an illness, but Mom was the one person who believed her.
ママを守るんだ。だから治療を頑張るんだ。
Kagari's young heart was filled with the hope that she could someday live with Mom. As soon as she opened the door, Kagari Shina was struck by an unpleasant wave of heat. It was early June, and this was the first day to hit summer temperatures. It was hot enough that just walking outside could cause you to sweat, but the small Japanese-style room had thick curtains and the windows were closed. The room was dark and cramped, and there were so many clothes on the floor there was no place to stand. It wasn't just clothes, there were all kinds of filthy things, bags with half-eaten snack bread still in them, half-rotted food packs, plastic convenience store bags overflowing with trash, all scattered around the floor. And the area around the half-naked girl sitting against the wall was covered in bandages and gauze soaked with blood and pus. There were bandages tied around her exposed stomach, chest, and limbs, but these were too soaked with blood. These two were soaked with blood. The room was filled with a sickeningly sweet stench, though there was no way to know if it was coming from the garbage or coming from her. The owner of the room, Moeka Kiryu, raised her head and looked at her, her eyes filled with hope.
M4
What happened to you? When she saw Kagari, who was still wearing her shoes as she came into the room, her shoulders slumped.
FB じゃない誰命の恩人に向かってひどい言い草ね
Moeka gave a painful cough and spit up some stomach fluid mixed with blood. It stained her thighs and the floor. Her wounds must have opened again because the bandages around her stomach began to turn red. She spent 5 months like this with no treatment from a doctor. Moeka had gotten into a gunfight with the Russian army and failed her mission as a rounder. She lost 2 of her companions, and her target, Kurisumaki's laptop, was also destroyed. They pinned the blame on her. She was wounded and almost killed. It was Kagari who saved her and brought her to this room. But if someone with a gunshot wound went to the hospital, the police would be notified. And for that reason, she'd never gotten any real treatment. Her wounds had become infected, and even 5 months later, they still brought her incredible pain. Her terrible fever hadn't let up at all, and it wasn't rare for it to go from 39 degrees to over 40. But Moeka didn't seem very interested in her wounds. She was more interested in sending messages with the phone in her hands. She must have been sending more messages to her beloved boss. In the past 5 months, she'd sent almost 1,000.
どうして FB どうして返事をくれないの
FB was Malika's boss in the Rounders, a woman who always gave orders to Malika via text message. Malika worshipped her to a degree that far exceeded what could occur within a normal employee relationship. The shock of being abandoned by FB had hurt her many times more than her actual wounds. Kagari tossed the bag she had slung over her shoulder at Malika's feet, along with 2 plastic bags. The backpack was filled with medicine that wasn't available without a doctor's prescription. Along with it was a whole box of illegal drugs used only for the treatment of severe pain. Normally these would be kept under strict control at a hospital where no normal person could get them. Both of the plastic bags were filled with canned goods and other things Kagari had chosen because they had the lowest probability of spoiling.
生きる気がなくなったら言うといいわ。代わりに毒でも持ってきてあげるから。
But Malika didn't seem to notice Kagari at all anymore. She was completely unresponsive. Kagari had gotten used to her attitude over the last 5 months. But she wasn't just going to go home today. She wordlessly reached for Malika's cell phone. Malika tried to resist, but evidently she had no strength left. Kagari was easily able to grab the phone. It was covered in blood and pus, but Kagari forced it into her pocket without hesitation. Malika started crawling towards her. It was like something out of a zombie movie.
勘違いしないで。FB から新しい命令よ。
Malika froze. New orders.
そう、受け取りなさい。
Kagari took another cell phone out of her pocket. It was the same Japanese cell phone that Malika had been using, minus the dirt and blood stains.
今までの回線はロシアやアメリカの諜報部に傍受されていて使えないわ。だから今後はこっちを使って指令が来る。
Malika reached a trembling hand out toward the phone, and in an instant she snatched it away and clutched it to her chest like it was her own child.
FB はこの携帯ならメールをくれるの？
多分もう来てるはずよ。
Malika quickly opened the screen on the phone. When she saw the words on the screen, tears started to flow down her face.
M4 私の可愛い娘大変だったわね。私もとても心を痛めています。失敗したことは残念だったけれど、あなたが生きていてくれて本当によかった。早く傷を治して私からの次のメールを待っていてね。今度こそ任務を完全に遂行し、私の信頼を取り戻してあなたのことを心から信じていますからね。私の大切な大切な娘。 FB より
Message received.
わざわざ読み上げなくてもいいのに。
Of course, this message wasn't from FB. Kagari had written it herself. Keep someone at the brink of death for 5 months, then give them exactly what they want as bait, and you can easily put anyone under your control. Kagari knew this well. The life suddenly returned to Malika's face. She spilled out the contents of Kagari's backpack like a woman possessed.
傷を治したいの。FB の信頼答えなくちゃ。
それでいい。M4。
Kagari smiled satisfied and knelt down in front of her.
私が治療してあげるわ。包帯を全部取りなさい。
When Kagari left the apartment, the sun had set. She spent several hours treating Malika's wounds. Her hands still smelled of medicine. It wouldn't go away for days, possibly. She sighed and put on her full-face motorcycle helmet, then went to the parking lot and got on her bike.
神様の声、そろそろ聞こえるかな？
She whispered. Okay. She took off on her motorcycle. You go whisper things, girl. Almost July. Rainy season hadn't been that bad this year, and what maybe it had already happened. Temperature-wise, summer had come a long time ago. In other words, it had almost been a year since it happened. So this is the same, I think. Then one Saturday afternoon, if I stayed home, not only would it be hot, but Dad would be on my case about helping with the family business. To get away, I'd come to the area around Ikebukuro Station. A year ago, I could have gone to the lab, but with Suzuha living there now, I'd mostly stopped going. But that meant it was hard to find a place to study on my days off. It was too much trouble to go to the university, and the classrooms probably weren't open on weekends anyway. After a lot of research, I'd settled on spending my free days visiting this cafe near my parents' home and spending a few hours there. In fact, a lot of the other patrons did the same thing I did, buying a single cup of coffee and sitting there for hours on end. Some brought books, some brought computers. I chuckled to myself as I realized I joined the ranks of the other normies. So he's at the cafe again, right? Where are you now? So she went to my house. My family's business was called Okabe Greengrocer. It was a beat-up old store located in a rundown shopping street. The place was almost 4 years old. I really wanted them to rebuild it. My mind had wandered. Mayuri was going to be here in less than 15 minutes, so maybe it was time to call it a day. I'd worked pretty hard during the morning, so it wasn't too bad. I was a little surprised at how hard I'd been working lately. I could feel that having a goal gave me energy. I needed to get to Victor Contra University as soon as I could. I was still in contact with Maho via email and chat. She was evidently busy with her research because she was always sleepy. I took out my phone. I found myself looking for a certain icon on the home screen. But of course, I deleted it myself 6 months ago. Amadeus. Was Kurisu doing well? Knowing her, she was probably coming up with some complicated theory or teasing Maho. It's also possible that she was visiting At Channel and hiding it from Maho. That's right, Kurisu had internet access, so it would make sense if she accessed At Channel. But given that... Kurisu had spent a lot of effort last summer trying to argue with John Titor on At Channel. That happened in the Alpha World line, though. Still, it meant that she was okay with posting. So there was a chance that Kurisu was doing the same thing. Right. Amadeus has temporary access. I opened the web browser on my smartphone without really expecting much, trying to search for a nickname I knew I'd never forget. Kurigohan and Kamehameha. It was the handle that Kurisu had once used. I spoke without thinking. I bowed my head a little towards the other customers who were staring at me coldly and looked back at my smartphone. Amazingly, the search turned up several hundred results. They were all comments on At Channel. I took a look at the dates on the results page. The oldest dated back to 2008. Those must have been written by Kurisu when she was alive. I never expected to see traces of her here. I didn't realize she spent this much time on At Channel. Her comments were spread out on a lot of different boards. Physics, mathematics, science fiction, oh, and of course the all cool boards. For example, in the science fiction thread, she'd had passionate discussions about time machines. But unlike in the Alpha World line, she never came out and denied the possibility of a time machine. Surprisingly, some of her comments seemed to be quite the opposite. After all, she'd gone through all the work required to write a paper on time machines. Compared to that, her comments on the Aqua boards were brutal. She would absolutely crush the arguments of anyone who dared to propose anything even the least bit unscientific. Supernatural phenomena like crop circles, poltergeists, and spontaneous human combustion, out-of-place artifacts, the Mayan doomsday calendar, conspiracy theories about how human DNA had been brought from another planet. What's all this? They broke them down and refuted them with a cold thoroughness that even drove away her own side. And if anybody dared challenge her, she'd leave them flat on the canvas. Well, great. It was just like Kurisu. Her comments offered so little room for discussion, it was aggravating to read them. Did she actually enjoy all this awful stuff? She put enough energy into this that I couldn't help but wonder, what's going on in your head, girl? The first time I met her at Laggy Steers ATF, I'd gone through the same experience. But after a certain point, the Kurigo and Kamehameha comics suddenly stopped. The cutoff date was July 27th of last year. The last comment was a slightly too heated response to someone who was mocking Dr. Nakabachi's time machine press conference. My chest tightened with the sensations of nostalgia and sorrow. I decided to close the browser. But then I stopped as soon as I saw her next comment. I brought the phone closer to my face and stared at it again and again. The date of the comment was December 1st, 2010. Kurisu died in July 2010, so this couldn't possibly be her. So who was it? Was it someone else who'd taken over the identity of Kurigo and Kamehameha? Or was it... Since there was no trip code, I couldn't tell for certain. December 1st was just after Maho and Dr. Leskinen had come to Japan, and it was also about the time I encountered Kurisu. After that, Kurigo and Kamehameha commented at about a rate of once per week. I looked for the most recent comment. It was a discussion about relativity theory. She really did get foul-mouthed when she went on that channel. But then I realized that she said the same thing to me face to face. If this wasn't some imposter, if this really was Kurisu. What a miraculous and yet stupid story. Did Maho and Dr. Leskinen know about this, I wonder? Probably not. Kurisu wasn't going to tell them. I couldn't help but laugh. Should I try to make contact with her? I wanted to see if this Kurigo and Kamehameha really was Kurisu. And then I came up with a good handle. Mayuri's neighbor. Of course, this was a knockoff of Maho's idea. If Kiryu and Kamehameha really was Kurisu, she'd have to notice it, right? Okay. There it's posted. How about that? I wrote something deliberately provocative, and importantly, I mixed in some mistakes. Not to brag, but I thought I knew a lot more about Kurisu than Maho did. What are you doing, Okabe? You bullying her. At some point, Mayuri had walked up in front of me. I've been so busy writing my comment that I hadn't noticed. I hurriedly put the phone away and stood up. Mayuri and I left the cafe. Mayuri and I headed for Tokyo. When I stepped inside the air-conditioned store, I felt refreshed. If it was this hot in June, I started to think what it was going to be like in July or August. So this is the same too, right? Yay! Wallpaper. 1912. Whoa! Oh, that. Oh. Ooh. So like that. Try to figure out the buttons. Oh, what the? Wait, hold on. Oh. Oh. Oh, the icons are on the bottom now too. Oh. My family business? My dad could be such a jerk.
お前がそんなことする必要ないんだぞ。
でもマユシーがやりたいからやっているのです。
本当にいいのか？
オカリンやおじさんおばさんにはいつもお世話になってるから。
じゃあ代わりに今度何かプレゼントするよ。
嬉しいな。
I took a quick look around and saw that they were selling a lot of things you could use for advertising. I decided to mostly leave the purchasing decisions up to Mayuri. They're going to the store again, but this time no crease. It took quite a while deciding. But well, maybe because of all the time she spent on making them square, her taste ran in the direction of cute and anime. Yep. This is really the same thing, I think. It's exactly the same.
お前。ああ、いや。
Mayuri looked confused and completely
とにか
oblivious.
くハート型のポップは不許可だ。うちが怪しい店にね。
そうかな。
Okay.
可愛くなくていいんだって。
My original intention not to interfere had gone by the
そも
wayside.
そもこれ以上買っても絶対余るぞ。これだけあれば当分困る。
そうだね。じゃあここまでにしよう。
Cash register. This is the same thing. It's all the same.
ウーパな、しかもそれレアなのは確かメタルウーパだっけか。
Yep. Yep.
チッチッチ。違うんだな。これはね、この前やってた映画にと。
緑のよ。
映画のね。
いいぞ。
そのバースーパーもうダメだ。実はいつも優しい。それが
なるほどな。
このキーホすっごく
ラッキーだったな。
今日は来てよかった。
おお、くれぐれも買って5分でなくしたりしないようにな。
Same.
もうオカリンの
まあ、その作業が俺もハートマーク。
大丈夫。
まあ、なんなら
オカリンは
最近は全然行ってないよ。
そっか。
So that's all the same.
どうした？
Is it still the same? Message from Tide. Yep.
何かあったの？
ねえオカリン、前に言ってた。
吹雪ちゃん？お、
でも
Yep, that's still the same.
ま
Yep.
た入院しただって。
Yep. Auto. Skip. No, this is exactly the
マユ
same.
ちゃん、こっちです。
Hospital again. Yep.
吹雪ちゃんは大丈夫だよ。
Except it's in a different chapter now.
驚かせ
というと？
今病室で吹雪ちゃんのお母さんに
じゃあ、
はい。
Same thing. Yep.
よかった。
あれは病気なんかじゃないと思うけどな。
吹雪ちゃんにそれがね。そう。でももう少し検査が終わったら声をかけてくれるみたい。すごい。
お、中瀬さんの家。
いえ、吹雪ちゃんこの病院。
そうなのか。
お願いします。
しかしね、
それで
That's all the same.
ノーというのはね、他人が見た夢な。
あ、教授、レスキネン教授、俺です。岡部です。
おお、リンタロ。
うわー、ちょっと待ってください、教授。ストップ、ストップ。
Same.
いやはや、
レスキネン先生、
あ、
見たと
いえ、俺は。
彼は
おほう、ビクトル・ポンドリア大学か。日本
この病院。
院長、そんな偉い人。
おや、確かに。それとも何かい？君は
でも驚きました。
リンタロは
あ、いえ、
ああ、そういや、
ああ、いえ、それで教授こそ。
君も知ってアメリカ政府、私も。
そうなんですか。レスキで。
もしかしてその君と克美が揃って倒れただろ。克美もう少し。
ああ、
実際のところ我々も日本の医師団も正直
あ、
何か。
いえ、俺は医学生じゃないのでさっぱりです。
ところで
Oh, still
自
singing.
分たちを
他の並行、実は俺も。
だけどね、確かに集団ってなんだろう。正直
そう。
君も医者にい。
はい。
さてリンタロウ、それクリスマスパーティー。やはりいや、ただそれじゃリンタロウ、できれば。
はい。
今の人ですよね。アメリカにおかわり？
No. Not new yet. What about here? After Fubuki's exam was over, we went to her room and listened to her complain, and then the visit was over. Just like Dr. Luskin had said, she looked just fine. She told us she was ready to leave the hospital and jog all the way home. Mayuri and the others were relieved, but I felt worried. Did I need to talk to Dr. Luskin about reading Steiner after all? But how would I explain it? It might be a better idea to talk to Maho and have her explain it to him. I couldn't come to an answer right away. We said goodbye to Kat and Yuki at one of the stations on the way back. Before we got to Ikebukuro, I remembered to take out my phone and open the web browser. Oh. I went to At Channel, eager to see how she'd responded to the debate I'd spread this afternoon. I put my hand over my mouth to stifle the noise. Mary had been standing next to me, and she was leaning over at my screen. I fished her up all right. I didn't think it would go this well. The timestamp was from just 30 minutes ago. I decided to respond immediately using the same name, Salieri's neighbor. I posted and then reloaded the thread. There was already a response from her. The time lag between the posts was just 21 seconds. It was kind of irritating to have her come after me so hard. It was as if she was insulting me as a person. Well, I was the one who deliberately written in mistakes, so I should have expected it. The thread's other residents were probably confused, everyone except for her. Mary had been watching our exchange and looked at me confused.
知り合いなの？その栗ご飯とカメハメハさんって。
まあな。多分古くから付き合いのあるやつだと思う。
Now then, how would she reply to the nickname Salier's neighbor in post I just wrote? I was curious, but there wasn't an immediate response like before. The train reached Ikebukuro station. The train slid into the station and stopped. I reloaded the thread one more time before the doors opened. And there was a very short response from Kiryu on Kamehameha. There could be no doubt now. This Kiryu on Kamehameha was Kurisu. It was a very hot day in 1998 when Suzuha said goodbye to Kagari Shina. She'd gone to get food and water from a local store, and when she'd come back and open the hatch, Kagari was inside screaming. Is this new or not? She looked inside and saw that Kagari was slamming her tiny hands down on the control console.
お前、何をしてるんだ?
Kagari shrank back when she saw Suzuha.
違うの。これはその。
答えろ。
だって目を覚ましたら鈴葉お姉ちゃんがいなくて、真っ暗で明かりもつかないし、狭くて怖くて苦しくて、だからかがりドアを開けたくて、それであちこちいじってるうちにこんなことに。
Kagari started to cry.
ごめんなさい、鈴葉お姉ちゃん。ごめんなさい。でも本当に怖かったんだ。だから。
そうか。
Suzuha relaxed her guard. Kagari had PTSD from her time as a war orphan, and she hadn't fully recovered yet. Mayuri had once told her that she got very frightened in dark and cramped places. It would make sense if waking up in the dark caused a panic attack. And the time machine could only function with Suzuha's biometric authorization. Someone of Kagari's size wouldn't be able to break the console either.
お前は時間移動のショックで気を失ってたんだよ。だから休ませておいたんだけど、悪かった。
Suzuha grabbed one of Kagari's tiny hands to help her up and then led her outside the machine. I think this is the scene too.
暑い。
かがり、約束するんだ。どんなことがあっても操縦席のスイッチに触ったりするな。いいな。じゃあ、私は仕事にかかるから、お前はその辺で休んでるんだ。飲み物と食べ物は適当に食べていい。
Suzuha handed Kagari the provisions she bought, then went inside and poked her head into the cargo space under the control console. She connected the IBM 5100 she'd stored there to a portable terminal she brought from the future. By all appearances, yep, this is the same. Yep.
何をするの
2000年も
施設の子。
表向きはね。公表されてないけど。
そう。
問題これにはというより第三次もしかすると2000年しかもそれにか私たちが目指してる狭間だからこれは2000年問題を起こさん OK つながった。
でも未来を変え
そういうもうあの世界
声神様
かがり
ダメだよダメなんだ。
おい お前何よやめろ。
動いちゃダメ。
Hey, skip isn't working. It's a different chapter.
正気
やめるの。
何
世界を変えちゃいけないんだ。
じゃあ
そんなの
なら私たち
うるさい。この世界を消すなんてダメだよ。
やめろ。やめてくれかがり。やめろ。
Right.
お、マホタン、おすおす。
Video chat session.
おはよ
Okay, this looks new. It was 8:30 p.m. at the Future Gadget Lab in Akihabara. Meanwhile, Victor Conjure was an hour off from usual due to daylight savings time, and it was 7:30 a.m.
う。ヒヤジョーさん大丈夫？
この時間だし寝起きっしょ。
Well, it was a mess. Her hair was never combed right, but her eyes were bloodshot and her gaze was wandering. Her spots under her eyes were too dark for the little bit of makeup she'd applied to cover them up. Her cheeks were sunken, which made her look even tinier than usual. On top of all that, her skin was terribly pale. She looked like something out of a zombie movie.
低血圧マホタンも燃える。
Normally, she would have gotten upset at Itaru's joke, but either she'd gotten used to it or simply given up because she said nothing.
そっちの進展はどう？
なんとかオカリンが分解しちゃう前の状態に組み立て直したを。機能はほぼ再現できてると思われ。
Itaru glanced towards the development room past the curtain in the back of the lab. Right now, he was working with Maho to recreate what Okabe had called the time loop machine.
うまくいかない
PhoneWave.
なんか安定しないっつうか、普通の電子レンジになっちゃうんだよね。
そう。何がいけないのかしらね。
オカリンにそこんところの話を聞ければ違ってくるんだけどな。
無理だよ。 私たちがこんなことしているって知っただけで怒鳴り込んでくるよ。おじさんは恐れているんだ。世界線の収束する力というものをあの人を説得するのは容易じゃない。
In fact, it had almost been a year since she'd first tried and failed. There was a moment of silence.
でマホタン、もしかして寝てんじゃね？
Maho's whole body jerked and she almost fell out of her chair.
危なかったわ。出勤前なのに二度寝してしまうところだった。
つうか頑張りすぎだお。無理して体壊したら意味なくね？
このくらい平気よ。というか、これだけやってもまだ天才にはかなわないんだから。
そんなことないと思うけどな。僕はさ、マホタンだって十分天才だと。
気休めなら不要よ。岡部さんの言っていたタイムリープ、こんなにヒントはあるのに未だに解を見つけられないんだもん。記憶データなんて膨大なものをどうやって圧縮して過去へ送ることができたのか。クリスはそれをやってのけたっていうのに。
Maho seemed upset. It was obvious even though through the monitor.
ごめんなさい。愚痴をこぼしている場合じゃなかったわね。今日の報告、他に何かあるかしら。なければそろそろ出勤しようと思うのだけれど。もう一つある。
Suzuha looked at Itaru.
前から調べてほしいって頼まれてた件について。
何か分かったの？はっきりしたことはまだ。そう。
あちこちのネットワークに強引に侵入したりとかギリギリまではやってみたんだお。
別に責めたりしないわ。今分かっていることを教えてちょうだい。
いやむしろ激しく罵倒とかしてくれて OK なわけだが。
父さん、早くして時間が来ちゃうから。
ほいほい。
Itaru opened a different window on the monitor. He displayed one of the text files in it. It was a record of the information Itaru and Suzuha had collected.
まずマホタンたちがホテルの地下駐車場で襲われた事件。警察の発表だと新興カルト教団の男が違法薬物を使った末にって話になってるけど、あれ間違いなく嘘だわ。
嘘？
犯人の身元は警察発表通り某大学の准教授。これはいいんだけどさ、そいつが宗教団体に所属してたっつう事実がこれっぽっちも出てこないんだよね。公安が隠し持ってる教団員のデータにもアクセスしてみたから確定。
捏造ってことなのね。
アットチャンネルとか見てるとさ、信者っぽい人が時々書き子するんだよね。教団は無実だとか陰謀だとか。そうすると一瞬でものすごい数の教団アンチが湧いてきてフルボッコなわけ。しかもそのアンチどももっともらしい偽の証拠とかガンガン出してくるんだよ。画像付きとかで。いくらなんでもあれはちょっと異常。
そうなの？私そのアットチャンネルというのをあまりよく知らないから。
アットちゃん含めてさ、大抵の大手サイトには工作員が張り付いてるもんなんだよ。しかもビジネスとしてバイト代もらってね。朝から晩まで24時間ぶっ通しで。
情報操作、プロパガンダだね。
政治家や官僚なんかもネット世論の誘導に利用してるし、それを専門にしてる会社もあるくらいだお。
なるほど、それならわかるわ。そのあたりはアメリカも日本も同じね。
でも工作員なんて僕からしたら IP 変えてもバラバラなんで。それでチェックしてみたらあの事件すごい人数の工作員が投入されてるっぽい。どこからそんなに金が出てるんだよってレベル。
そう。父さんのバイト先が襲われた方の事件は？
そっちも同じ。
The police had called it a fight between foreign mafias trying to expand their territory in Japan. The media never questioned the story at all, and even people on the boards of the famously skeptical ad channel believed everything they were told. Of course, there was no mention whatsoever of Russia or CERN.
でさ、試しに目撃者を装って ロシアの特殊部隊を見たってすれ立ててみたんだよね。そしたらまあすごいのなんの、炎上しすぎてびっくりしたお。あん時は思わず工作員の本名から会社名まで全部晒してやろうかと思ったっつうの。
Evidently, he'd been really irritated. It was rare for Itaru to get so angry, or maybe it wasn't, she decided.
つまりどこかから圧力がかかっていて幕引きにされたってことね。さすがは自由の国日本だけのことはあるわ。
アメリカも似たようなもんじゃね。
違いないわね。
The two of them smiled at the joke.
つうわけで僕としてはお手上げ。
そう、それで十分よ。調べてくれてありがとう。
ヒヤジョーさん、研究所から来日の許可は下りそうなの？
それがレスキネン教授の助手として連れて行ってもらえるよう何回も申請しているのだけれど、却下の連続なのよ。
レスキネン教授は今、こっちに来てるんだっけ？
ええ、新型脳炎の調査でね。
Since it had nothing to do with artificial intelligence, it seemed Maho wouldn't be allowed to go along.
いいわ。どうしてもダメと言うなら、こっちにも考えがあるもの。
どうする気？
まさか上官の命令無視してでも正義を貫くとか？そして悪に捕まってしまうんですね。わかります。ねえねえマウタン、殺せって言ってみて。できればすごく悔しそうな顔で。
父さん。
Does it have to be that? Suzuha's hand went for her back pocket.
させん。
Itaru's shoulders slumped as he apologized. Lately, she'd been able to put a stop to Itaru's terrible jokes just by doing that. She wasn't sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing that she knew exactly how to handle him.
まあ、とにかく近々そっちへ行くわ。
わかった。日程が決まったら連絡を。それとヒヤジョーさん、出勤するならもう一度鏡を見てからにした方がいい。
Just before they ended the call, Suzuha decided to warn her. Maho stood up and walked towards the closet without turning off the camera. She vanished from view, but a moment later... She must have seen how terrible she looked, because she put out a very unfeminine scream. They relaxed for a moment after turning off the video chat. Suzuha thought back to the time before she'd become a time traveler. She did this every time she got off the video chat with Maho.
タイムマシン開発の協力者、ヒヤジョーマホか。
It was after Maho had gone back to America that she'd volunteered to help Suzuha and Itaru with the time machine. That meant that when Itaru Ishida completed the time machine 25 years from now, Maho Yajo must have contributed in some way. But...
あんまり未来のことを言うのはまずいんだけど、父さんの仲間にそんな名前の人いなかったんだよね。
え、そうなん？
ということはさ、どこかのタイミングで開発メンバーから抜けるってことなんじゃないかな。自分の意思なのか、それ以外の外的要因なのかはわからないけど、少なくとも開発の主要メンバーじゃなかったと思う。
そうなのか。かなり頼もしい人だけどな。
こんなことを言いたくはないけど、どこかのスパイという可能性もある。
いくらなんでもマホタンに限ってそれはないよ。
ごめん。でもそういう可能性もあるっていうことだけは頭に入れておいて。言ったでしょ。第3次世界大戦前の情報戦はもう始まってるんだ。
I don't blame them for being suspicious.
マシンの秘密が無駄に漏れるのは困るよ。それだけは徹底するようちゃんと注意しておいてよね。で、この先のタイムマシン開発はどう進めていくつもり？
やっぱオカリンの協力がないとな。
結局そこなんだよね。オカリンおじさん、やっぱり無理なのかな。こうなったら力ずくで。
前にそれしようとして失敗したのはどこの誰だっけ？
Suzuha pursed her lips. Even with a gun in his face, Rintaro Okabe still wouldn't get in the time machine. To be honest, Suzuha was out of options. She stifled a sigh. It didn't do any good to let herself get down.
そういえば母さんとはうまくやれてる？
な、
私そっちの方も心配なんだ。大丈夫？私が生まれてこなくなるような事態にならないよね。
なんつうの？
ちょっと困る。いっつも口ばっかり。
あれはさ、その後。
でもその後
誰？
まゆ姉さんとで
す
ダメだこれ。いい父さん。そういうか約束したはずだよ。もう迷うの。
ごめん。
しょぼくれてんで。高すぎでもな。返事は？
さあ、イエスさあ。でもその前に。
何しに？
いや、実は夕食がまだっつうか。
バニラ。
はい。
私。いっぱいはいらない。
そう、イエス
やれやれ。世話がかかるんだから。
鈴葉。
どうかして。
階段のところにさ、こんなの落ちてたんだよね。誰のかわかん。
まゆ姉さんじゃないの
？Yep.
このウーパー。
Yep.
どこかで。
This is deja vu for me too. Now.
どこだ？
まゆしに。
そうなのかな。
ママがずっと大切にし。
かがりのか。
かがり。見つかったん？
いや。
つまり。
あいつこのラボを監視してるんだよ。いや、あいつは私たちがしたということは。父さんがもっと。おかしな。ブランクカートリッジ。
今のって。
アイス。
もちろん。
All that was the same. Out. Wasn't there? Anything there?
すごい人だね。日曜日の空港を侮ってたにゃ。
見逃すなよ、マユリ、フェリス。なんせ相手はとにかくちっちゃいからな。
Alright. This is different. Yep. A lot of repeated scenes there, but yep. This part's different though. So great. Alright. I will continue next time. Bye!